A rude boy was taught an important lesson after a subway incident. Each generation argues that they are well-mannered, listening to so-called better music, and wearing more casual clothing, regardless of the generation, and claiming that in every way they are better today than the entitled privileged kids. Okay, what do you think? Perhaps that may be the case. We are all aware that while we are on the subway, there are a few unspoken rules that everyone must follow. Some kids, however, may be a little rude and outright disrespectful. Therefore, after refusing to comply with the said rules, this man took it upon himself to teach him a lesson. Being on the subway as a commuter can be a little bit uncomfortable. It is also quite difficult to search for a seat, but if you manage to find a seat for yourself, you are only allowed to take one seat at a time. This young man, however, felt that he had a right to more than 3 subway seats, stopping anyone from taking a seat. However, this man did not have any of that. Not all of us have the privilege of having our own car to drive on our way to work and back home every day. That's why public transport is awesome, because it makes it a little easier for most of us who don't have a car. Nonetheless, this also implies that people who feel no need to pay any respect to everyone else will have to face us. Public transport can bring out the absolute worst in everyone, for some strange reason. And by absolute worst, and we mean the absolute worst characteristics of individuals. Trains and buses are now a world of dog-eat-dog, and this article is proof that many of the passengers around them are far too cruel and care for no one else. During your daily commutes, did you encounter people like this? There are many situations when you encounter someone or something that you think is offensive on the train or bus. After all, in an enclosed space, there are a lot of people around each other, which is why there are always moments when you travel and meet other people who act in a way that they don't seem to know they're offending the other people around them. There will be occasions, for instance, when a passenger will not forfeit their seats, while others will put their stuff next to theirs on the bench, eventually preventing any passenger from sitting there. When people play songs out loud and make a loud phone call that will last longer than 30 minutes, there will also be occasions. Only a few of the most irritating encounters you can find on public transport are there. Selfish passengers, as mentioned earlier, believe they have the right to sit next to their own seats, preventing other people from sitting down. But are you curious of what is worse than that? The ones who put the second seat on their legs. It is already terrible to take up more than one seat, but to refuse to give up the spare seat when someone kindly asks for it? Unacceptable. Different people will deal with different situations, such as this, in different ways. Some would approach it by attempting to make a deal in the most peaceful manner possible. Some would also be as rude to argue at the same time, as constantly asking for their seat, never stopping until the seat has been given to them. Of course, you have absolutely no idea what the rude passenger might be doing. There's no way to tell if that rude passenger will suddenly stand up and try to pick a fight with you. Do you think it's worth it for the sake of being able to sit down on public transport to be involved in a violent fight? Well, in this story, the victim has done something that you wouldn't believe. Twitter post by the username @DA_drought_3 captured everything that happened in this story. Her Twitter post immediately became a viral sensation, as it had amassed over 137,000 likes, 47,000 retweets, and thousands of comments as of May 2019. In the comment section of the Twitter post, there were many comments that seemed to praise the person in the tale so positively. Some of these comments include, "As a New Yorker, this gives me life. My faith in humanity has been restored, and it's the only way kids will learn." But what was the tweet with which many people agreed? Is it the right thing, really? Isabel Kim was the name of the young woman on Twitter who was able to capture an awesome moment on Twitter. On social media, she was recognized at @DA_drought_3 and is quite active on Twitter, as she is widely recognized because of her posts. Most of her posts include things that she likes and the different moments she has captured and decided to share with her huge virtual audience. The day had begun to be mundane for her, but when she took the subway on her way to work, she noticed something strange going on before her own eyes, making her take pictures of what she saw to share with her fans on Twitter. To fully understand what happened in Isabel's tweet, we first need to put things in perspective to understand what was going on in the situation. Those who are familiar with the metro know that there are trains that are not sectioned separately. This implies that instead of having a seat per person, these subway trains could have long benches that can accommodate more than one passenger. That is exactly what happened in this instance. While 3 people could easily share the room on that bench, when he had other ideas when letting others have seats on the metro, this young boy became the greatest irritation of the story. In the public transportation environment, people are all familiar with the unique category in individuals informally called the laydowner, which is almost self-explanatory. In Isabel's Twitter post, the young boy perfectly describes this type of traveler. By placing his legs on the bench while leaning up against his mother, this young boy felt entitled to have the entire bench to himself. Certainly, this type of passenger is irritating. He took 2 seats due to his actions when he placed his foot on the table. He seems unaware of the damage and discomfort he caused everyone else on the subway whilst playing games on his mobile device. Is he like that, self-absorbed? Maybe we don't know if he really didn't know or if he knew it, but he just doesn't care about anyone else. Generally speaking, everyone agrees to give up their public transport seat to others who need them more than you do, especially the elderly, people with disabilities, and pregnant women, as well as many others because their lives are a little more challenging compared to everyone else. They need a little support at least. If you fail to do this, though, in public transport, you will undoubtedly be frowned at by everyone else. He dismissed them and continued to play the game he was playing on his mobile device, despite 3 individuals asking the child to move his legs to sit on one of the 2 spaces he was occupying. What made this situation even more irritating was that the mother of the rude boy was there yet did nothing about the situation and continued to be oblivious. This boy not only disregarded everyone's demands, but his mother still declined to show any kind of notice or consideration. She was nearly as naive about the case as her son was, which is probably why her son was like that. She had also changed her phone, like her son, and was eerily lost in whatever she listened to. Those who stayed in the metro felt that there was an alarming situation. And with every second passing, the people around him who were waiting in front of him slowly became angrier, and the boy felt the frustration he could build on the subway when it was all centered around him. The boy tried to crouch up a bit and make a little room for others to sit down, to try to mitigate the problem, but this proved to be ineffective, as it annoyed them even more. His attempts to ease up on the people proved pointless, as his legs still occupied spaces on the bench. Although the people in the subway didn't do much about it, they were fed up with the boy already and thought that negotiating with him was no longer useful. That was until someone walked past and saved the day. Who or what was it? A mystery man came over and after a short time stared at the disrespectful boy as he started playing with his cell phone. Many people have posted comments on the tweet saying that this guy may have been a British pop star wearing black sunglasses and a hairstyle strangely identical to Elton John's. Well, it wasn't him, obviously, but what would that British superstar do on a subway like that? Still, the plot did not take away any comedic effect. It even made the story more hilarious, if ever, as it looked like Elton John in the subway actually was. What exactly did the Elton John lookalike do that made it a viral sensation for this tweet? Did he do something out of this world? The man who looked a bit like Elton John was standing there hoping that the kid would notice that he wanted to sit down and free up space so that, like everyone else before him, he would be able to have a seat. This is why, when this rude boy decided to ignore another person once more, this mysterious man became even more annoyed with the boy's arrogance and actions. It was evident that this man was insulted by the insensitivity of this young child, as well as his misunderstanding of the situation and the tension surrounding him. This is where he wanted to take it into his own hands and tell himself that if no one did it, he would do it. What exactly was this man doing? Well, this guy was doing something that the kid would never forget, a lesson he'd stick with until he got older. The guy did something as brazen as sit down on the kid's legs without any second thought. He respectfully asked the boy to move, after all, before he did what he did, but just as the boy did to everyone else, he refused the man's request. The man lost all his patience unexpectedly and made the most of a terrible situation. The seat was not held by the boy after all, and he had all the rights to sit there. Isabel Kim was able to capture the very moment when the kid was shocked after the stranger sat on him, which is certainly a remarkable moment. The kid was speechless, and he could do nothing but sit there with his mouth wide open. It was like this was one of the rare occasions when this kid didn't get his way on the basis of these images and had a hard time accepting what happened. The man who was sitting on the boy had every right to sit in that space, as opposed to the boy who put his legs there. This kid named Joe did not seem to have been taught any etiquette at home, which is why this mystery man wanted to teach him a lesson. It was too late before the mother noticed what had happened. There's no denying that the boy learned his lesson. The lady couldn't pay much attention to anything that had happened. Even after the guy had sat on the child's legs, the mother discovered that they had missed their stop by the time the man was able to make himself more comfortable, and immediately decided to blame her son for her fault, which is certainly false, as she was to be the one to pay attention to the stops, not her son. By blocking all the music and YouTube in the world around her, instead of herself, she has no one else to blame on that occasion. Isabel was able to record the aftermath of the crazy moment on her phone, which she also posted on Twitter. The whole thing became very awkward as the boy's mother created a scene because of the situation, which is why they wanted to get off the subway as quickly as they could. Not only did the guy give an important lesson to this kid on etiquette of public transportation, but the woman swore to him in front of everyone who was present at the time. As soon as Isabel finished filming, the mother and son left the subway, but that's not all. Right after the video ended, the kid went to the man to say something to him. However, after a lesson on proper etiquette was taught, it was not the type of phrase you would expect. Instead, the stranger who had sat on his legs before leaving was cussed. The story became unforeseeable, but there were different instances that made you wonder if it really happened. What would you do in this situation? As the story spread, it became so popular that some people had t-shirts made of it. When the person on the shirt, who looked like Elton John, sat on the legs of the other person, the exact moment was captured. It's only normal to say that Joe will be remembered forever alongside the Elton John look-alike in subway folklore. However, while there are many people who were fascinated by this incident, there are also those who did not agree with what the man did. Actually, they had a lot to say about the incident and they didn't hold back. What did those people have to say about the incident? While many people considered the situation to be amusing on social media and were pleased to see that there was a man who decided to bring justice where it was needed, there were people who said that what the man did to the child was not at all right. Anyway, who was on the right, really? Did the guy do what was right? Or has it been too much? Let's read what has been said by other people. Some would even question whether or not that was legally acceptable, categorizing the incident as a form of assault. Although this was the minority view, a large percentage seemed to favor the action of the stranger. Wait until you read the next one, where your dad teaches a lesson to a group of strangers, if you think this is a remarkable story. As a famous saying goes, pulling someone down with you will never help you reach the top. Bullying had increased plenty all over the world. By this point, it is pretty much a global predicament and needs to be quickly addressed. Most of the reasons behind bullying tend to stem from the offender's personal problems. That doesn't excuse bullying or give anyone the right to bully someone else, all the same. Just take a look at this father who refuses to let his son suffer anymore. Thanks to him and his coat, things have turned around for his child. The boy who fell victim to bullying was Joey Mason. Often he liked to hang out in the park and play ball there. Joey is just one of the many bullying casualties at his school. When he was playing in the park, however, he found a lot of happiness and comfort. Nevertheless, it seems that no matter what he was doing, he would be intimidated anywhere at any time. A group of teenagers happened to stop at the park on this particular day, where he usually played. Knowing that most people don't know how to deal with bullying is quite unfortunate. Something had to be done about it. Joey Mason was in the 4th grade when the bullying started. Although it was rather mild, thanks to this, instead of people in his class or other children, he chose to play with his dog and cat. He lives in a Toronto, Canada residential community, and there was a beautiful park near his house where the kids enjoyed playing. He used to visit the park rather frequently to play with his ball after school. That is, until he went to his favorite outdoor park one time after school, which turned out to be somewhat of a nightmare for him. He was able to see that the older boys in the park were not good at all. Joey thought one of the best ways to express how he had been feeling about bullying was to take to social media. He posted, "My name is Joey and I'm 10 years old. I'm a victim of bullying. Please stop bullying." His message drew a lot of attention from various internet users. However, a lot of people who saw his message did not take note of the individual that mattered the most. His father was totally unaware of what was going on in the life of Joey and the fact that he had taken to social media. Normally, parents wish the best for their children. It's only natural for a mother or father to worry if their kid doesn't feel well. The father of Joey was just like any other parent out there. Immediately, he saw that every day his son was not happy, and he was alarmed by it. He made the decision to take action to investigate what was happening in Joey's life. He tried to speak to his son first. Joey refused to give him the answers he was looking for, however. From the day Joey had switched schools, Joey's father slowly began to see the small differences in his son. He knew his son had begun to turn into an emotional mess from the moment he switched over. He wasn't quite able to put a finger on what troubled him. He did know, however, that he would soon figure it out. He thought that the new school environment might have been the cause for the drastic change, or maybe it was the teachers, or perhaps the other students. Joey's father would see that his son was back crying every day that his son came home from school. Clearly, this was a sign that something was wrong. He didn't have enough proof that he was being bullied by his son. The father decided he had to get to the bottom of the problem, and he couldn't believe what was happening once he discovered everything. He knew that something had to be done for his son, and that it was necessary to take action. The father was sick and worried about his son, and as time passed, he really didn't want him to continue being sad. It was painful for him to see that his son was so upset. He decided eventually that he would do something about it immediately. He wasn't exactly sure what that would be, however. He had to come up with and follow through with an action plan. Still, it took some time for him to put this plan into motion. Joey's father knew he had a plan after thinking it through for many hours on end. It was not long after that he began to figure out that kids in his class were bullying Joey. He couldn't help but wonder, though, whether his son's teacher was involved. Their home life was going well with their family, so he was sure the problem was not at home. He hadn't figured out what the truth was, but he didn't know how to get it out of Joey. So part of this plan was to follow his son to the park secretly when school ended. It was then that he saw the light. It was annoying to see that the place that Joey enjoyed the most was becoming the worst place in the world for him. It did not make him feel safe and secure anymore. Thanks to the bullies in question, this was all. When those teenagers came over to him, Joey had already begun playing with his ball. They were unaware, however, that there was someone else out there watching them. We're not sure what the teenagers wanted to do, but soon they targeted Joey. This has been going on for several weeks, and it seems like the boys were there whenever Joey went to the park. Fortunately, Joey was strong and brave, so he decided it's best to ignore the name-calling. Still, it seemed that the group of teenagers didn't give up, and, in fact, they even upped their bullying game. Joey was a harmless boy and never caused anyone trouble. Thanks to this, Joey was seen as a good target for those teenagers. Around him, people seemed to think everything was fine. Nevertheless, little did they realize that very soon there would be a huge turn of events. Joey was going to be in a lot of trouble soon enough, and that uproar began to attract the attention of everyone in that park. Although Joey was brave enough to ignore all the names, he didn't have enough confidence to defend himself in school. The other school children who were conscious of his bullying weren't brave enough to speak up for him. The majority of the teachers thought the children were just fooling around, aside from being bullied at school. The children pushed the boundaries and began to torment him in the park, too. Fortunately, someone else was watching everything that was happening in the park, hopefully to help Joey out of this mess. Whoever the individual was would soon step in. The teenagers thought it was really funny that they stole Joey's ball with no intention of ever giving it back. Things were very quickly starting to get intense, and still no one offered to come to the rescue of Joey. It seemed that things were normal for the outsiders looking in, since the kids were just playing with each other. Things were a lot worse than this, however. The adolescents had an ulterior motive. One of the teens in the group yelled, "Hey kid, nice ball you got there, can I see it?" Before Joey could respond, the teen snatched his ball away from him. Joey tried fighting back while yelling, "It's mine." Still, the teenagers kept on going and said, "Come on, just give it to me, man. It's just a ball." None of them knew they were being watched the whole time. Who was it that was nearby? The man who happened to be watching had remained hidden from view of the children. The torment, meanwhile, has only gotten worse and worse. The older teenager kicked the ball to the other side of the park, away from Joey. The man decided at that moment that enough was sufficient. For him, it was time to interfere. The cruel teens had no clue that this man just happened to be Joey's dad. The teens began looking wary as Joey's father rushed over. He demanded in a harsh tone to know what was going on. It was clear that they were shocked by the teens. They were speechless and had no idea how to respond to what happened. Moments later, the boys were gathering some courage and decided to face Joey's dad. Little did they know, he had something up his sleeve that they were completely ignorant of. The boys simply pretended that there was nothing happening. When requested, they responded innocently and said that they were playing ball. They hoped by answering this, the man would leave them alone. The man did not, however, believe a word that came out of his mouth. He had seen more than enough of it to know what was happening in the park. He knew very well that they were not just playing ball.